Welcome everyone to our second Farmers in the Field. This is part of the Regenerate Now Learn Together program. We have other parts of the program that you can utilise. We have the Regenerate Now Instagram, which has a weekly takeover by one of the UFA farmers. They're from the Urban Farmers Alliance. And we'll also soon be announcing our Regenerate Now masterclasses. But today we're at Chris at his farm in Hamilton, Earth Steward Farms. And thank you, Chris, for allowing us to do a virtual tour with you on this online platform. About 6 months ago, the Urban Farmers Alliance did a mentoring session in your farm, and I know that many of us are really interested to know where your farm has got to in the last 6 months, because at the time we visited you, I think you had been farming for just over a year, potentially. So I'm Sarah Smuts-Kennedy. I am the vision holder of For the Love of Bees and the Urban Farmers Alliance. Regenerate Now is a program under the Urban Farmers Alliance community. And I am here today as one of the mentors. Bailey, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, Bailey Peryman, sitting here in Christchurch. It's a pleasure to be connected in. I've heard so many great things about the farm operation you're running there, Chris, and I think Warwick behind the camera there. Thanks for joining in, and thanks to everyone else for tuning in. Should be a good session. Daniel.
Yep. I've been working with Chris now for, I guess, I don't know how long, Chris? Over the...
Yeah.
About a year. Yep, that sounds about right. In a role of mentor, I guess, in trying to help fine-tune the growing systems and the operations here at Earth Steward. So, and helping them through various problems and challenges, and also do the soil analysis, which we can have a look at later if we've got some time. But yeah, Chris, if you'd like to show us around your farm, we'll get going.
Yep, cool. Where would you like to start? Because it's a big property.
Actually, probably start with introducing yourself.
Well, I'm Chris. I've been farming this land here for coming up to my third season this spring. Yeah, we have 1.5 acres now in production, and we have just opened up another 2,000 square meters. Yeah, that's about it.
And what are the processes that you've been using, Chris, since you started?
So we started traditionally. So I taught myself on YouTube how to farm after being a chef for 10 years. So in 4 to 6 months on YouTube, I learned the basics of farming and started very, I guess, traditionally following the 6-figure market garden program. Very quickly, we realized that was way too much hard work, and we don't like to do hard work here. So we have switched to the no-dig system, which we have found has benefited us greatly in all areas. Yeah.
What do you think was the main thing you had to get your head around with that shift, or did it seem to be quite a...
It was very natural. Yeah, it was very natural. It was just progression of the farm. We didn't have to force it. It just happened on its own. The processes and things were all just much simpler. It just made sense for us to change to that.
For people who have no idea what that really means in a practical way, can you give us a very sort of quick rundown as to, in terms of bed preparation and in terms of transitioning beds, what is the biggest difference from the way you started to how you're working now?
Well, I guess in the beginning, like everybody, we were overrun with weeds. And I was on my own then. So one of my first mistakes was starting too big and doing too much. I got overrun with weeds, and the weeds in the first year were up here over my head. And that was just terrible. I almost gave up farming that year. I almost quit. I had enough. So I guess the biggest thing, the traditional way is to weed the bed by hand, broad fork the bed, which is quite laborious. And when you're working on 1.5 acres, you don't want to be broad forking hundreds of beds. And then we have the tilther, which sort of levels and finds the top of the bed, and then hand transplanting. So that all is hugely laborious. To plant 1 to 2 beds would take us a whole day if we had to flip the crop, the previous crop. Now, with Daniel's help and advice, we have a flail mower, which chops the previous crop up and lays it on the bed and levels the bed, and it's ready to go. So that takes all of 3 minutes to do a bed. And then we are transplanting straight into that bed, which we're using the paper pot transplanter for. So before, we could transplant 4 to 6 beds in a day. Now we can do that in about an hour.
And in terms of compost, how are you integrating your composting into the system?
Well, it's still something we're learning that. So we've gone with the same bin system that NZ Box is using, but we built our own bin. So most recently we have found it best to use the flail mower and chop up our old crop residues, add the BAM to it, then add it to the bins. So we've only just started doing that recently, so we're still yet to see something come out.
No, I've got one out. 6 weeks, and it's beautiful compost.
6 weeks. There you go. So we brought in a lot of compost. So all of our new blocks, I think we brought in like 150 to 170 cubes of compost. And we just built 5 to 10 centimeters, all the beds straight on the ground after killing off the grass. So a lot of our blocks are at 10 to 13% organic matter now, so don't need a lot more compost. Sorry, my phone going off.
Right.
It's
Hey,
good.
do you want to make your way down through the LMU1 there? I think you're standing next to. Where are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just over here.
Yep.
I'm just going to take the phone off, Warwick. So, hard to see, but this is LMU1. There's 60 to 70 beds in here. Yeah.
Now, you've standardised all the size of your beds, haven't you? I think we worked out today, the other day, they're all supposed to theoretically 36 square metres each bed.
They will be.
Okay.
They will be soon. A lot of them are still 750 with 250 par from which we started. And as we're rotating crops, we're changing them to that 36 square metre bed. So they will all be standardised to the flail mower size.
So that's a 1.2 metre wide bed by 30 metres long. Right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what's the crop that's right behind you at the moment?
Right behind me is some old capsicums that I didn't stake and that have fallen over, but have produced really well. So, yeah.
So is that finished production, or are you still picking from it? No, you're still picking from it.
Still picking. We're going to pick our last week, next week, and then we're going to pull this out.
All right.
And that we've got a lot of celery in here.
Okay, and you're planning on just mulching that as it is?
Yep. Hang on. Rock's touching the screen.
Am I?
Yeah, you're frozen.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I'll keep my fingers off. All right, how's that? Better?
Yep.
Much better. Lovely fingers, though. So when you say pull it out, what you actually mean is terminating it as opposed to pulling the root system out.
We won't pull anything out.
Yeah, they're just going to mulch it. I don't know if the other people have seen the mulch mower in action on Earth Steward's Instagram site. I think he's got a short video showing.
I put it up on the WhatsApp too.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, that was really exciting to see, and I wondered, are you setting that in a way where you're cutting like right at the soil horizon, or is there an inch or two, or are you even looking?
I'd say we're going into the soil about 50 mil. If we do it on top of the soil, the plant grows back.
Okay, that's interesting. So you said you're going down, say 50 mil. Was that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Took
Okay.
the roller off the back.
Yeah. So I used to have a roller on the back, but we took it off. Find it a lot better because it was pressing the beds too hard, and we were having trouble transplanting into that.
And how have you find the take of your first lot of transplants back into that flower mode bed?
I'll have a look here.
Pretty good. We have a few issues with poo geckos at the moment.
Sure, but that's not a planting method.
It's not a very good harvesting method either.
We'll just walk out to a field that has got a lot of paper pot transplants in it.
You show them down here.
All right.
There they are.
Can you see that? So this is all paper pot, paper chains.
Nice. Yeah, so that's looking pretty consistent. And one of the questions, and one of the I'm seeing from the chat, I think it's from Zane, asking about planting polycultures within one bed, or whether you have multiple species within one bed.
We started talking about that. Yeah, it's something that's on my mind because you guys talk about it a lot, especially OMG on Instagram. They talk about that a lot. We tend to not, just for time purposes, making harvesting easier and things like that. But I have just interplanted a bed of lettuce and spring onions, and it's going to get radish in it too. But that's as game as I've got so far.
That's awesome.
As you get further into the season and the planning that we're trying to do, is that we'll start looking at I guess in summer there's a lot bigger range of possibilities for multiple species in the same bed. You can get lots of different heights. And in winter, in this case, when you start to talk about brassicas and that sort of stuff, it is much more challenging to introduce other species into the same bed space. But it's certainly something we've got in the back of our mind. It's just it's part of the planning process that we're trying to work through at the moment.
It's worth chilling what you planted today.
Okay, cool. So what we have in terms of the UFA kind of methodologies that we are investigating and innovating as a community together to get the maximum climate change mitigation as well as maximum productivity. You are well down the track with the no-tilling. You've been trialling that for how long?
How long have we been no-till? Probably since last winter.
Okay.
And then before that, it was very minimal till.
Okay. So no-till at least for a year. And you're starting to look at how you might integrate multiple species into your production schedule. You're working at a much bigger scale than most of the other small-scale farms that we're working at. So that's something that's going to be an incredibly useful innovation for everyone. But you're also doing a lot of foliar feeding, aren't you? So in terms of the difference between conventional or organic, you're doing a lot of, you're certified organic, but you're doing a lot of foliar feeding. Do you want to have a talk about the processes that you take your production through in regards to the microbial interventions that you're doing?
Well, actually, hang on, come up. At the moment, we're not doing much field foliar feeding. That's something that me and Daniel are talking about implementing.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the farm's so big and we have 3 staff, and it's very, very hard to get that into the schedule. It always seems to be the one thing that falls off, along with weeding carrots. But we do a seedling soak before they go out, which is all the microbial products. So they get a big soak before they go on the ground. And I do try to feed in the greenhouse at least once a week. But like I say, these things do fall off. Once we set up the system for the irrigation, we will feed through the irrigation once a week.
So the plan is to use some sort of dosatron Venturi system through overhead irrigation. And part of that is that gives us the ability to feed in whatever microbials or microbial food sources to kind of make that whole process almost semi-automated. I mean, that, I said on this sort of area, running around with knapsacks of watering cans just isn't practical. So it's either got to be mechanised in the form of a sprayer on the back of the tractor to be able to spray them, or what we're looking at the moment, as you said, is overhead irrigation application of those foliars.
Okay, but in any case, how are you finding in terms of the reason? One of the reasons that we use the foliar feeding is actually to make your plants pest resistant. Obviously, you're inoculating your seedlings and treating your seedlings quite sort of rigorously before they hit the field, and they're hitting a field that hasn't had any soil disturbance. What's your what's the, you know, in terms of what is the resilience of the plants? I mean, tell us a little bit about the disease patterns in your space. You've got your finger again, Warwick.
Oh, sorry. I'll lift it out of the way. Is that better?
Well, like I was saying to you guys when you asked me what issues we were facing, we're not facing any issues besides not being able to put enough food in the ground fast enough. That's our biggest issue. We have no disease, no pest problems, other than white butterfly, but that's everybody has that as far as I know, and that's a time of the year thing. Am I right?
Are you getting damage from the caterpillars and those white butterflies? You're seeing the butterflies but not the caterpillars?
So probably the one thing that we did get damage on was our tomatoes.
And when was that? Just the end of the season?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of caterpillars in there. I think I did talk to you about that as well, Daniel. So
yeah,
that was one thing that we had problems with there.
Yeah, but interesting.
And then we just used the BTK on them. Is it BTK? Yeah.
Can you explain for everyone what BTK is?
Daniel?
So what he's talking about is bacteria called Bacillus thuringius kostaki. So it's a bacteria that feeds on technically Lepidoptera, so any sort of caterpillar moth type species. You only have to get it on the outside of the caterpillar. A lot of people believe that the caterpillars actually feed on the plant and they consume that bacteria, but in actual fact, all you have to do is spray it, get contact on the outside, and the bacteria, they're called entomopathogenic bacteria. There's a lot of fungi that do this as well, and they effectively feed on the insect from the outside in. The minute that the insect detects they're being fed on by those beneficials, they actually stop feeding on the plant. So when you get those things to work properly, they're an amazingly good tool.
Okay. This particular field, do you want to tell us about this field, Chris? Are you about to plant into it? I mean, obviously, one of the things that we talk about is having a living plant as much as possible in the soil system to be feeding the microbes with exudates. So what's the story with the particular field?
This was last week. The greenhouse is full of probably like 200,000 seedlings in paper trays, just probably a week away from going in. I just had old pumpkins in one side, and one side was tarped, just to kill the grass, stop the weeds, which Daniel doesn't like, but sometimes you got to do that.
I try to discourage you from doing that as much as it's humanly possible. But yes, I understand sometimes it's another tool. It's just you don't want to use it too long. I think that's the issue.
Yeah.
And can you explain again, because we've got people here learning with us today, and thank you, Chris. It's really an amazing, we want to be getting to mentoring you, but actually what you're doing at the moment is really, really helping other people learn alongside you. Can you explain, Daniel? So this is a real situation. You've got real life and then you've got ideal life. And in real life, you've tarped it. There's different types of tarping, right? There's tarping with plastic, which doesn't breathe, and tarping with a breathable material. And Daniel, do you want to just explain very quickly why that's not a preference?
Okay. So killing off the weeds, or what the people call solarization, which is really common, and they're using plastic to do it, means the moisture can't enter into the soil zone. The temperatures get very high. Effectively what you're doing is sterilizing the top 5-10 centimeters of that crop, depending on how hot it gets underneath there. And if it's black plastic down on the ground, it can get extremely hot. Using something like a weed mat, which are a permeable material, so moisture can get through it, means what we find is the biological life can actually thrive underneath it in that zone. The shading effect will still impact the weeds and the weed growth underneath it. So that's the general preference, that you can sort of get a composting process that is happening underneath plastic. After a period of time, it just basically can turn quite nasty. It's quick, but not necessarily the best end use. What I have done, just quickly, in some places we're starting with blocks. I've actually used a flower mower on pasture and really mowed it very, very short. Same sort of thing that you're doing to the crop, and then lay compost down on top of that. You'll get a similar sort of result. You're probably getting, just where you're doing that composting, the mulch mowing, Chris, you probably maybe need to back off a tiny bit. You're probably slightly over, you are actually kind of, at the moment, you've gone from no-till to what's considered minimum till.
Yeah.
You probably need to...
In my opinion, there's no way to not do that unless you're laying a lot of compost on, which we don't have the money for.
No, it's yeah, I understand what you mean. When you've got soil like in this LMU2 area, it won't be as friable and free as you have in the first block that we looked at.
Yeah.
Because the development is, they're very different when you look at the soil analysis from these blocks. But like that, what you're seeing at the moment is what we call LMU2, right? Which is
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So LMU means Land Management Unit. It just is a way of referencing each block for a soil analysis. So there's 5 different soil analysis that have been done on this on this block because of treatment of different types of soil here. But like where he's standing at the moment, that actually is near to perfect organic matter levels. So adding more organic matter in this situation is just under 10%, it's 9.9%. Continuing to add organic matter to it is a problem which we can sort of talk about later. But anyway, Chris, I'll let you show us what's in that, what's the rest of it on the farm here before I carry on.
This is some intercropping that I did today. Can you see that in here?
Yep.
What's there?
So just lettuce at the moment and spring onions. So I'm going to put some radish in between as well. Yeah.
This is where you had your tomatoes growing over the summer.
Yeah. So I pulled those out, flower mode. So we did pull those out of the ground. We didn't cut them. They have a very shallow root system, but they will go back into the compost.
And how are you seeding? What's your seeder of choice?
We don't use a seeder. We only use a seeder for carrots. Everything else is paper pot.
Right, so your radishes are transplant as well?
Yes, everything is transplanted.
Yeah, right. Wow, and how do you find that as far as like
Amazing.
spacings and the sizings that you're ending up with? Is there much variation in the cell sizes?
I would recommend everybody get a paper pot. They are just life-changing. Yeah, it's doubled our production overnight.
Yeah, that's
between that paper pot and that flower mower, it's definitely doubled our production.
where on the other side. Surely is there a bit of an uptick in how much time you're spending in the nursery?
Less time.
So,
Yeah, less time. Crazy, isn't it? We use
So
less potting mix, and we spend less time in there because of the paper chains are 264 cells. They're all uniform, 264 cells. We have a tray that fits over them with holes for the seed. So we shake all the seed into the holes, then we just pull a lever and they all drop into the paper pot holes.
Yeah.
And we're done. So
Would it be possible for you to continue your tour with us, Chris, and take us to your nursery?
Yeah, we can go there.
And how did you find getting a paper pot transplanter into the country?
It's a matter of going to the people over in Activista and James Hutchinson and ordering it.
the price that those guys have on their website actually includes freight to New Zealand to main centres, just like sending it anywhere in Australia. So it's actually really easy to get hold of the equipment through them.
The paper pot planter has, Chris says doubled production. It's more than double production. It is absolute a changer for the whole way this farm operates and the number of staff that you need. So there's three things that we've invested in: the transplanter, the flower mower, and a well. It's been so dry down here that we have been, with our irrigation system, using heaps of water just to keep the moisture level up. And so we've got a new well, 40 meters deep. Well, it's actually 50 meters, but it's drawing over from 40 to 50 meters, produces around about 3 cubic meters an hour.
Wow, I'm very jealous of that.
And it's beautiful water. The water coming out is drinking quality, and there's no need for anything to be done. We are inside the seedlings plant.
So Chris, in regards to your seedling production, which is really critical, what's been the biggest learning curve for you?
Seedling?
Yeah.
Getting the soil, the potting mix right. I remember last time you guys were here, it was not right at all. And I was struggling a lot. I actually threw out into the compost 5,000 seedlings because the compost was just not good. So we've changed to Dalton's potting mix now. We would like to make our own, and that's one of our goals probably this year, working with Daniel. Once we get our compost right, we'll start making potting mix. So that's a crucial point, getting that potting mix right. And then the plants grow themselves.
One of the keys to getting potting mix right is the standardization of your trays that you're using.
Yeah.
And so the paper pot plant, the paper pot cells, everything being basically the same cell, actually makes it much easier to manage. You know, they're a very well designed tray and planting system.
Are you bottom watering? Those seedlings?
No. I would love to bottom water, but we don't have the infrastructure right now.
Yeah.
So we're just overhead,
yeah.
manually doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of bottom-up watering. Having put in capillary beds and capillary mats, there are systems that work, but actually once we started, many years ago, and understanding the microbial health of the plant, we actually found overhead watering to be superior. So it's just a matter of, you're actually better. Sometimes it's simpler just to use the overhead watering and better for the plant and the microbial health of it.
Yeah, can I just say that also when you are sort of overhead watering and you spend the time with your plants to see what's going on with them and you're checking them twice a day, you really get a feel for where they're at, and you can get on top of problems if you find any a lot quicker. So
and so when you say getting on top of, sorry?
Carry on.
So getting on top of problems. So first of all, what are the problems and how do you get on top of them?
Well, there are none here.
But in the past?
Watching them.
Just, well, I couldn't grow seedlings for a long time. We brought them in actually from another organic seedling grower. So the problems that I had were, I think, nitrogen drawdown, where the plants were just yellowing and dying. So they'd get to a certain point, yellow off, and they just wouldn't grow anymore.
Yeah, it's probably that is probably just as much, you know, the mix that you're using being too dense, not enough air, and you got root die off as the plant gets bigger and all sorts of stuff. But do you want to just show us that paper pot seeder? I don't know how many. I mean, people have probably seen them on YouTube if they've looked at this stuff. But
so that's the seeder. And it comes with these inserts, which are all different sizes for different seeds. So that slides into there, and you fill it up with seeds, and then you just click it, and it just drops all into the cells. So it's 264 seeds per tray. Very fast.
And here are the trays.
These are the paper pot trays. So that's what the paper pots go into. Yeah.
And what are can you show us the paper pots?
Can, but we'll need to walk again for that. The paper pots can't get wet, so they need to be stored inside.
Or do you want to see one of the trays from overhead for the paper pots there, like that?
Like this one here?
We can actually see the paper pots. Oh, hello, we've stalled again.
Can you see that?
Okay.
Yes.
You see in the bottom corner, you can actually see the paper pots through the middle of all of that.
You can see all the chains here, the honeycomb.
Ah, okay. So the honeycomb.
So I guess there is one problem in here. Since the weather started cooling down, the staff have still been overwatering, which I've just pulled them up on recently, and you get a lot of algae growth on here because they're getting too wet.
So there's a few questions here for you, Chris. Somebody's asked, do you wait for the true leaf stage of a seedling before transplanting, or do you plant it even before that? When do you transplant?
Depends how busy I am. Generally true leaves. If you look at these beetroot now, these beetroots are too big. They've been in their cells for too long, and you can tell if you come down here, right? These ones, you can see I'm getting a lot of dying off. I guess they've run out of nutrients in there. You see that, Daniel?
Yeah, it probably is actually more likely to be that end of the trays getting dry because the plants are getting big. There's not a lot of room left for, for the water holding capacity, and the water's not getting down and through the tray in places. The corners usually dry off for that reason, usually because they're exposed to more air.
Here's some younger beetroot, which is pretty close to going out, but over this side, this is probably still a little bit too big, but around this size is where I'll put them out. So.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why planning, is becoming more and more critical for this business and the size it is to sort of try and streamline things so we're not doing more than you absolutely have to from a propagation side of things, so that minimizes so you're not planting in excess of what you need.
We're definitely not in excess. We are behind, but it's just, I guess getting into the field and getting all the jobs done that we need to do.
So you're about to take us to your storehouse, which is great because I noticed in one of to see the paper pots, which I think we all want to see. But also one of the things that you really are looking at, and you've talked about is enough production, complexity of production, and you're moving from a farmer's market to a CSA. And so I'm presuming that you are now walking close to where you are actually doing that. So these are tools. To see these tools is great, actually, Chris.
What's happened?
You're all good.
You're good.
All right?
Yep.
Yeah, it was all going kind of okay.
So
Yep.
This is a paper pot transplanter. So those trays sit on here, and then we feed out a chain down the chute and use one of these pins to stick it in the ground, and that holds it there while we pull it along. It creates a furrow, and then it uses these paddles here to bring the soil back around the plant. We've actually modified this paper pot twice now, and we're going to modify it again to suit what we want it to do. But yeah, that's how it works.
Great.
So I'm going to show you the flail mower before we go inside. So that's the flail, and it's got these teeth under there. Can you see those?
Just point it down a little bit more. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so it's got those teeth. And that's what chops everything up.
That's 1.2 meter wide, 1.25.
So in terms of, and what is this tool?
That's the tilther, a battery drill powered mini rotary hoe that sort of only does the top 50 mils and will level a bed.
Are you still using that?
Not really.
Not when we've got that sitting there. It's taken over.
So we'll just go inside.
So Chris, while you're walking, so you're not really doing any cover cropping?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are. We've got 2 cover crops going at the moment.
And what are they?
We've got blue lupins and vetch on the 2,000 square meters. And
A real mixture on the other
a bit
one.
of a mixture on the other one. I think there's about 10 different things on there.
That's great.
That's not on this site though, is it? That's on your new site.
No, that's on LMU 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, okay. The site you haven't grown anything in yet.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you're doing that as soil preparation?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you planning to integrate cover cropping in? Because one of the things that Daniel's been talking to us about recently is that microbes don't care if the exudate comes from a cover crop or from a plant that's producing food. And he's encouraging us to transition away from thinking about cover cropping as plants that don't produce food, but in fact, plants that produce, that are producing food. Can the two of you just talk to us, because I know that Daniel's working very closely with you at the moment. What are your thoughts around that, Daniel and Chris?
I'll probably just say that's up to Daniel. I would like to cover crop. I think that's probably something that we would like to integrate here. Definitely. Feed that soil, because we know that from feeding the soil, we have healthy plants. So we've got to take care of it.
Yep. It is, it's a tool. And so cover cropping is a strategy that can be used, but it would normally be used where you're starting from a very low organic matter point, or very, very poor health, where you've got high levels of chemical toxicity and that sort of stuff, particularly on large scale. I think on the small scale areas that you've got, where, like, I can show you for argument's sake there, LMU4 that he's talking about, that they put a cover crop into, for argument's sake, or LMU5 for that matter. I mean, they're already starting at 10% organic matter. Mm-hmm. So the cover crop in itself is, in this case, is really about reducing weed strategy ahead of planting in there in spring, but they're not really needing it to lift organic matter in those blocks, because they're already at really good levels of organic matter. So yeah, it's a case of using it where it makes sense. And what happens with cover cropping is it tends to get hugely overused, and people end up using a cover crop quite often where they should just be planting a cash crop. And it's much better from a business model perspective, from an income model perspective, to be planting something that you're actually going to harvest.
Yeah, we're going to try that one there.
So I'm just trying to answer questions on that chat line as well at the same time.
Oh, it's good. And this is the paper pot.
this is a paper chain. I don't have the tool for opening it now, but I can open it a bit. So you can see how those cells open up.
Great.
Yeah, like that.
Simple, very simple.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a tool that's very well suited to the market garden sort of setup when you're getting into multiple blocks of multiple beds.
Yeah.
I noticed the greens harvester behind your head there. How do you find using that?
Well, we don't actually grow any quick greens anymore. We only use that for microgreens. But it's amazing. We love it. And if you're using it in the field to do those leafy greens, it's amazing and it's so fast. So I can clean it, but that's what it looks like. I can put the drill on it. So it just takes the battery-powered drill, which is flat.
That's okay. So Chris, we've got about 15 minutes left, and what I would really like us to focus on now, that was a really amazing tour of your farm, and I think very inspirational for
Another battery.
Okay, awesome. Well, great.
So it just runs like that.
No, here we go.
So it's got a blade on the bottom, flicks all the leaf in. Got a pouch on the back, catches everything. Yeah.
Great.
Carry on.
So as I was saying, so in the last, I wanted to just really acknowledge that how having a farm of your scale is really inspirational for our projects. Many of them have started quite small, but at the moment as communities, we are really imagining, building up to scales similar to yours. So having you working at scale is really beneficial for the community. So really thank you for that. But the thing that you said that, in terms of you don't have any pest disease issues, which is really amazing because I know 6 months ago there were a number of those things. So you're obviously the well-being of the farm is really starting to kick in. But one of the things that I would love us to have a look at is the CSA that you are, you've gone from a farmer's market 4 weeks ago and you transitioned very quickly into a CSA model. So do you want to talk about how that's shifting your thinking in regards to the way that you are looking at farming?
Sorry, we just lost video there. What's happening? Oh, got you back.
Yeah, cool.
Well, yeah, we actually are very happy that this has happened. It sort of forced us to do something that we were working towards, and it's really accelerated that a lot. Whereas we actually stopped doing restaurants probably a month before.
No, end of the year. We stopped the beef basically. Oh no, January.
January,
28th of January.
In January, we stopped supplying wholesale. We made the decision to not supply wholesale anymore. It was too demanding. People were hard to get hold of. They didn't pay bills. We got a low price for our product, and we just weren't interested in that. That was also taking up 2 full days of harvest and delivery, and then having the market harvest day, and market day. So that was 4 days of our week. We caught up harvesting and delivering. So now in transition to CSA, we harvest on 1 day, and then we pack boxes on another day, but we're still learning how to do that. So we think we can get it down to a day, harvest and pack 150 boxes of produce, which is more income, I think, than we were making at the market. Double what we were making at the market.
But now you're starting to think, rather than somebody coming to you and purchasing things that they might like, a few carrots, you're actually starting to almost be responsible for producing weeks worth of food for a family. I mean, that's what they're relating to in terms of a CSA box. So that will have a relatively, it will have a kind of an impact in terms of your design around production, surely.
Yes, well, what's happened with that is that before in the farmer's market, a person might buy $20 worth of vegetables. Now they're buying $40 or $50 worth. And so that doubles for the same number of people that we are supplying.
But in terms of, so one of the things that we're thinking around the UFA is not just food, but nutrition. So in terms of looking in terms of planning going forward, what's in that box, the complexity, you know, how many things, how many different things are in that box, and how can you grow things that you can store, and how are you growing things that you're coming on obviously weekly. Is that, I mean, I know that you're looking at the moment, what I'm trying to do is to tease out the conversation that you are having currently with Daniel around your crop planning, because obviously you're doing something at scale. You need to really, and what you've said in your thing is that initially you didn't think that crop planning was something you needed to do, but that's a big transformation for you at the moment.
That was a little bit misinterpreted. I did a crop plan before I started farming, and then I started farming and realized I didn't know what I was doing. And the crop plan that I did that was very elaborate just went out the window. Something I would say on that and crop planning is that I would, because I had zero experience going into farming, if I was to do it again, I would probably want to work on a farm for a few years and do a few seasons and see how the crop cycles work and things like that, and pests and days to maturity and when you can grow things, because I had none of this knowledge. I only had YouTube. So now that I'm coming into my third season, I've got a very good handle on what I want to grow and how much I need to grow, and we are refining that with Daniel in our crop plan. And your other point of, I guess, having a diversified veggie box that's not just salad leaves, we are aiming to provide everything that people need in terms of vegetables and fruit, which we will be buying in, but we do grow a bit of fruit here. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. And what has been, obviously you've talked about the benefits. What have been the challenges in the transition?
Lots of things. Actually relying on other people has probably been one of the biggest challenges. The couriers have been very difficult, but we've only been doing it for 2 weeks, and we went from 2 boxes to 150 in 2 weeks. So it was a massive, massive learning curve. We had to figure out how to use the website, because that was only operating 2 weeks before lockdown. So we had to learn how to take the orders. We had to learn how to deal with the customers. We had to learn how to send it with the courier. We had to learn how to print labels. We had to find out where to get boxes from, get the right size boxes. Lots of things have happened. It's been crazy. And I've just been swamped for the last 2 weeks, drowning in emails and inquiries and orders and farming and all sorts. But it's been fun.
So Chris, in terms of having Daniel there as a mentor, can you describe, on a daily basis or a daily, weekly basis or monthly or seasonal basis, what is having that mentoring enabling for you, and how are you utilizing it?
Oh, it's amazing. It's a lifeline.
End of a telephone.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like the whole WhatsApp UFA group, obviously you all know that I was very active on there a little while ago, because I had a lot of issues. It's just the speed at which Daniel gets back to you. I can send him a photo, he gives me an answer, we sorted it. It's been a lifeline. I probably wouldn't have survived without it. It's been amazing. It's crucial. Like, if I would say all new farmers would benefit greatly from having that.
And in regards to your knowledge around the microbial nature of so obviously you're primarily a farmer, right? But actually in terms of the microbial life that you're working with, was that something that you had much knowledge about? And would you say that you have increased your knowledge around that, or is it just getting the systems right? I mean, what's your relationship to your microbial community like at the moment, as opposed to where you started?
We still don't really understand it. I know it works, and you know, health and well-being is something that I've always been interested in. My background as a chef, and then sort of moving out of that to get away from that unhealthy lifestyle and then into farming. For those reasons, I know that there is symbiosis between all things. But yeah, I guess my knowledge around that has improved 1,000 times over than what it did before I met you guys. Obviously knew that there was relationship there between the soil and the plant, but I didn't know to what extent. And that Daniel has really helped greatly with that.
There was a question earlier on from Katrina around like your farm is next door to the Waldorf School, and obviously Warwick is a big part of that. What is your relationship to that school, and what do you think the benefits of having a project like yours next door to a school is, and how does that, you know, obviously at the moment there's no connection, but you want to talk a bit about that?
Well, I can answer some things there. We have set up the Rotatuna Farm Trust, which is a charitable trust, which is for education, for workshops, and education is the main purpose for it. And that is going to be able to work together with Earth Stewards and to be able to work with the school. One of the things is that I'm very interested in is being able to bring the children from the school to be able to see and be involved with the growing the veggies, and then taking some veggies back for being able to use them in their cooking classes, etc. So yes, there is a great thing with the school. And the other thing is too is that there's the community of the Waikato Waldorf School also are very good supporters of the CSA. Well, hopefully they will be when they come back out of lockdown again and can start purchasing their boxes from us. But you know, there is we started off this whole site as education as being its primary purpose, and I think that is where we're still heading towards. One of the things is that we have here is the school's been going now, and this land has been 25 years, about now, nearly 25 years. And we started off in the early days, and we did a lot of biodynamics and BD 500, etc. we put on it. But this impetus with Chris and Earth Stewards has really given the whole garden a completely different flavour. As you can see, it has just taken over in a couple of years from what was a pasture and a small garden that the school used into quite a commercial operation now. The land is leased by the Rotatuna Farm Trust, and Earth Stewards has a license to occupy. The whole idea is to try and get some continuity and some assurance that over the years this land is going to be available for farming and for this purpose of growing vegetables, and so that we can demonstrate that it works. We can demonstrate that we're providing a service, and we'll just keep on going like that with a long-term prospects of the lease and the occupancy rates.
So, Chris, can you talk us a little bit about your vision moving forward? You know, what's next for you guys?
Well,
400 boxes, isn't it, Chris?
Our goal this year was 150 boxes, which we've reached in 2 weeks. So setting a new goal now, probably for spring, for around about 300 boxes, I think, and then just building to maximum capacity on this farm in terms of production. Aside from that, like Warwick said, workshops and a lot of learning. I've actually been in contact with Charles Dowding from England, and he's interested in coming over and doing some mushroom workshops and things like that. And obviously we all host workshops on the farm. Yeah, building that online presence and the CSA is our #1 goal at present.
And Daniel, can I ask you, as somebody who has been looking for people like Chris, you know, to actually start doing the practices that you are capable of supporting, can you talk a little bit about what it's like to be, you know, in this position at the moment, supporting someone like Chris?
Well, I mean, it's an unusual experience in some respects, because a lot of people, I guess, bring a huge amount of sometimes experience into the growing scene that the company that I'm usually dealing with. So you've got a lot of historic knowledge, and so you're constantly battling that historic knowledge that's sort of ingrained within the business. So to work with someone like Chris, who basically, I mean, he had already worked out that he wanted to go down a no-till minimum till route, and obviously following Charles Dowding's stuff online is great. I've come across him as well. But yeah, the experience is, from my perspective, it's great to have somebody that gets it, that simply understands what it is that I'm talking about, and you're not having to battle through that sort of ingrained institutional knowledge that you often have to deal with in existing horticultural companies. And Chris has got the one essential ingredient both Chris and Warwick have, is this passion about this program. It's passion about their business, and they get excited about getting the results that they get. So it's a very, very enjoyable experience working with them.
And Bailey, I'd really like to ask you, because you potentially got an opportunity to, roll out support some small scale farmers in Christchurch, but also roll out some, really big projects, hopefully. I mean, what are your thoughts having seen the farm today and seen Chris, and do you have any questions for him?
I think it's just great to see it happening and being done well, and seemingly relatively calm about it, Chris. And I know coming out of hospo and into farming, looking for a better lifestyle, I thought, hang on a sec, that doesn't usually, those two aren't usually more like a like-for-like match than a change. So obviously something is working there. I would hope that I'd love to hear more about how you found it with bringing staff into the picture, because really where we're looking at, I mean, these are types of systems I imagine seeing more of these dotted throughout most suburban parts of basically all of New Zealand. We've got space for it. So yeah, it's more then about how you bring people into it. And do you feel like you're already doing some training with your staff? Do you feel like you're already having to take on that kind of level of leadership?
Yeah, 100%. Heaps of training every day. And yeah, lots of observation too, and conversation around what we're seeing. Definitely. Observation, I think, is key to a good farm. If you're paying attention to your farm and what your plants are doing, the seasons and things like that, you're going to have a lot more success. And that's something that I teach them every day. We try to go out we do go out for a farm walk every morning, and we just talk about the farm and what's happening and what we're thinking and things like that. So I find that really beneficial.
And as far as the setup and the time frame, I mean, how realistic do you think it would be to get through your first season on a new bit of land and be breaking even or covering your costs and being a sort of scale that you're at?
Well, I guess that's why we're trying to work towards a model where we can show that we can work out all the kinks for other people and say, this is how we've done it, this is how much we make, and this is how you can do it. And that's one of our goals. I think both mine and Warwick's goals is to show a profitable small-scale market garden in the city.
And how do you, that's awesome. And how do you plan to communicate some of those learnings? Because I know for one, we'd love to slowly extract them through the Urban Farmers Alliance, but yeah, do you have any thoughts?
Right now, it's just surviving every week. Obviously, with all the updates that are happening, we're still growing as well. So I think once we've stopped growing and we like growing the business and we've got to a comfortable stage where we know, I guess that there's going to be no more surprises. I think that's the time when we'll say, okay, now we can start to teach and to do more of that stuff. But for now, we have to make sure our systems are bulletproof, and we're not there yet. I think Warwick would agree with me.
So one of the things is, Bailey, is that we've been talking about the actual growing side of it and the land and the plants and all the rest of it, but there's equally as big an administrative side, a financing side, and the whole marketing exercise. So, you know, the growing of the crops is just one part of the whole thing. And in fact, if you don't get the administrative and the money and the cash flow and all those things right, well, you just can't get anywhere at all. So that is, in fact, even just as or even more important than the growing.
Yep, that's very fair point. I'm aware that some operations, we start to get above a certain scale, you're spending more time harvesting than doing anything else, and focusing on getting stuff ready for your market. So I do think, you know, you're clearly off to a fantastic start. So I would just like to congratulate you both. You obviously have a good partnership together as well, and so on to that. And thank you for taking the time to share us around the farm. I've enjoyed seeing it. I've loved your responses to our questions. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Chris. It's really, I think for those of us who came and visited you 6 months ago, and we're seeing that there were lots of questions and lots of disease and seedling issues. It's very inspirational to see how passionate you are about being good at what you do. And thank you very much. You're a really fantastic part of the team, and you know, make a huge difference to the UFA.
Oh, thank you guys. You guys have made a huge difference to our farm and probably our success as well. Without you guys, I don't think we would have got here this quickly. So thank you guys.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, it's now 5:09. Anyone who has any other questions, you can fire them through on WhatsApp. We're going to make this now available for other people to watch. Last week, we looked at Zane and Sophie's farm. We didn't invite other people to watch, but our mission is to make this live stream so that people can be learning across the world together, across New Zealand and across the world together. So thanks, Guy, for being part of this first live stream pilot of Farmer in the Field. And thank you, Chris, for being our Farmer in the Field today.
Thanks, guys.
And I think that's us over and out.
Awesome.
Yes, I'm just wondering how the nutrient stays cycling compared to the old mindset of wanting to keep adding stuff to the soil.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question from, I'm just trying to explain this in a as quickly as I possibly can at the moment, because it's really the subject of a much longer topic. But essentially, if you think of soil in a systems, so in itself, it's a living system, right? It is actually designed to function without you, right? It doesn't need you coming along to turn it over, rotary hoe it, or add fertilizer to it. What you quite often see, if I got a chance to show you some of Chris's blocks that have had nothing done to them, they're just sitting there as pasture. I say nothing done to them, they've been turned into pasture, but anyway, they haven't had anything growing in it, versus the stuff that started growing in it. What you do is you suddenly look at a piece of land that's just been sitting there growing grass and may have been grazed occasionally, actually has a relatively natural, well-balanced nitrogen cycle. Its levels of phosphorus are more than adequate. In fact, there's no need, there's a whole pile of things that there's a few things that needs to get it to balance. But essentially, once that you've basically repaired the system to balance, in itself, it's a fully functioning standalone operation. So soil in itself is a living, think of it in terms of you as a living organism. Soil is a living organism. What it needs to feed it is plants. So what's designed to feed it, so it's a microbial system. And what feeds that is photosynthesis, or plants growing in that soil. As soon as you remove the plants from the soil basically begins to die, right? So you've stopped this energy system that soil or that system requires, is actually photosynthesis from plants. When you harvest a plant, and like you see with Chris with some of the crops there, and you mulch the plant residue and you put another plant in, you're simply continuing that cycle. What we do when we create a system that requires continual inputs is that when you take it, and the first thing you do is you kill, quite often the first thing we do in conventional horticulture systems is we actually try and basically, I say solarization, we're trying to kill, cook, steam the top, 20, 30, 40, 50 mils in the effort of trying to kill grass. But how we do that is very important, because we can actually kill all the biological life in that soil at the same time and send it all into a dormant state. If the next thing we do is come along with a rototiller or some form of cultivation equipment and actually basically flip the soil on its head, turn it upside down, put it through a food processor in effect, to mash up everything is now dead, you've now basically then further destroyed it, you have broken the soil system's ability to basically function. So how we think we repair that is by starting to throw fertilizer and other goods into it, and compost and stuff like that. But essentially what you've done is you've broken a system that was actually very self-sustaining in its design by Mother Nature. And the first thing we've done is destroy that, and then basically we're left with, the only option left is basically to keep throwing food in it, because the system that was feeding itself, and it can feed any plant that goes into it, you've actually broken. The biggest one that starts was the nitrogen cycle. So nitrogen is one of the most common, or the most common gas in the atmosphere. It's nitrogen, hydrogen, but anyway, it's something like, from memory, 74,000 tons of nitrogen above every hectare. Right? How the plants access the nitrogen is through a microbial network. So there's nitrogen fixers, organisms on the roots. There's nitrogen fixers on the leaves. There's all these. There's this massive biological cycle built around actually supplying the plant nitrogen. We immediately break that when you start throwing nitrogen out of a fertilizer bag. Right? You upset the natural balance of the nitrogen cycle. And it's really hard for people to get their heads around, because we've had 50, 60, or probably 80 years now of being taught that how you grow things is basically by, well, actually it goes back thousands of years, and you think in terms of people who've been ploughing land for years and then pouring manure and other inputs into that. But essentially what you find is that civilizations have collapsed because their topsoil has eroded to such a degree because of this cultivation method. That's hopefully giving you a really broad sense of where I'm coming from. Is one is a concept that the soil is a living system, and the other thing is it's something that actually holds the plant upright, and we can dig it, turn it, cultivate it, feed it at will, and that's the right thing to do. Where it's fundamentally flawed, and yeah, it's about learning how to manage that soil system.
So I'm thinking, Daniel, our first masterclass that we do might very well be looking at, because there are a number of projects where we've been really great composters. We've been developing soil systems with compost, and some of us have actually got to a point where we have too much carbon. It's not ideal any longer. And how we actually take our gardens from being, and I would imagine that we don't have Judy Keats on here, but I don't think
she was there.
I don't think she's still with us. But where we might look at, you know, when you've got your garden to this place with not understanding that there's such a thing as too much compost, how do we reinvigorate our soils? And obviously you've explained plants, letting plants do it, but I think that could be something that we look at in one of our first master classes.
Yeah, because I think
5:18, Zane. It's now 5:18, so I'm hoping that has answered one of your questions, but I am going to bring this to a close because we've had a massive week putting together. Hope everyone got the newsletter. We've done the press release, and Bailey's been working on an incredible document, and Daniel's also been working on an amazing document. So we're next week heading into being able to pull all of this material together and really looking at what the Regenerate Now Recovery Farms package look like. And hopefully what that will enable are lots of farms like we saw today with Chris. So unless there's anything else anyone wants to say, I just want to thank Daniel for being our rock and being, you know, and Bailey for, you know, really stepping up into enabling this project to go to the next level, and also to all of you who are actually creating your own projects out there in the world that are becoming models and teaching sites for everyone else.